Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. A lot going on in the news. I think it's only apropos that we start with the Hunter Biden findings. Your thoughts, Dr. Lopkin, both judicially and politically.
Well, judicially,
Because
this is very
is this now
interesting.
over? Is
Um,
this now swept under the rug?
not not necessarily. Hunter Biden entered into a plea deal with the Department of Justice on tax evasion charges and fraudulently obtaining a gun. Now, just because he entered a plea deal, it still has to be approved by a judge. So a judge can still say, no, this is ridiculous. The fact of the matter judicially is that nobody, go back in history, nobody charged with fraudulently obtaining a weapon has ever been let off without jail time. So there is a real doubt that a judge is going to rubber stamp this. Now, of course, the
Yeah, but
liberal.
this is a question for me and hopefully for our listeners. But in today's world, can't you just judge shop? I mean, that's what essentially our judicial system has come to. Go to some
That is it.
shithead judge in California, they'll put the rubber stamp, and life goes on. Meanwhile, some black
I
kid in
don't.
Philadelphia
I
who did
don't think
half
they
of
can.
this.
These
Good.
charges were brought in Delaware. So I think they have to go to a Delaware judge. I don't think they can shop the venue on this one.
Oh, let's hope not.
So now that
Maybe they can
doesn't mean
shop
they're not
within Delaware.
right. That doesn't mean they're not going to find a favorable judge within Delaware. But
See, I think this has ramifications for legally. I don't really give a shit. I mean that facetiously. I think it proves this with the Durham report or further findings coming out that there's a lot of shit going on here and things are not kosher.
yeah,
You had what Nadler and Schiff making an entire career over something they knew. They're in the know. They knew it was all bullshit. Okay, the Hunter laptop. Oh yeah, you would. 35 ex-intelligence people signing off that it was Russia disinformation. Are we in a banana public or republic or the United States of America? It's
no,
an open-ended question.
we're in a banana republic at this
Thank you very
point.
much, Dr. Lopkin. We are.
This
You can judge
this
shop.
deal.
You can prosecute anyone you want. Basically, we're talking Stalin deja vu all over again.
Yeah, this deal.
Stalin light.
Yeah, this deal shows that there is a double standard in the Justice Department. This shows the weaponization. And liberal pundits and even Merrick Garland are all saying, "Oh, well, but this was an attorney general that was appointed by Donald Trump." That is irrelevant because no matter who appointed him, he worked for Merrick Garland. He knew his career could be sidelined anytime Garland wanted to. So the fact that he was appointed by Trump is irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, one thing I would say, one good thing that's come out of all this, Garland was never qualified to be on the Supreme Court, if you remember back then.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
a political hack who's just basically a low grade enforcer.
yeah. For those of our listeners that don't remember, Merrick Garland was the Supreme Court nominee that Obama put forward close to the election that the Republicans refused to even give a hearing to. And over the last several years, Garland has proven them right.
100% correct. How does that sound? And nominated or put into the nomination process by the corrupter in chief, who's always above the fray, and that is our esteemed Barack Obama. Always gets a free pass, doesn't he? The weaponizer.
Yeah, he has weaponized our government better than anybody else in history,
The
and
only
they
good thing
give
he's
him a
ever
free
done.
pass. They
Yeah, the
always
only
give him a
successful
free
thing he's
pass.
ever done.
It's
Agreed.
true.
Things are starting to heat up a little bit on the Republican side. Don't know how much opportunity there really is. I actually feel that there may be as time progresses. Um, that you have Chris Christie basically saying that Trump admitted to obstruction on a Fox interview. Of course, holding true to his class or lack thereof. Trump called Christie a slob. There you go. And we're not back to 2016, are we? Because I don't think that shit's going to work anymore.
I don't think it's going to work for him. There have been many major donors that have lined up behind Chris Christie. Ron DeSantis has also lined up some major donors. So Trump is going to have a hard time finding new donors. And that's a big part of what decides who can win. But I honestly believe at this point, as I did in 2020, the only person that can beat Donald Trump is Donald Trump. And
Yeah, but he can do a heck of a job of it.
yes, he can. And if you saw the Fox interview, he's already doing a good job of it. Brett Baer was asking him questions straight out. He was avoiding some of the answers. He was belligerent. People are getting tired of Donald
I'm getting
Trump's
tired of it.
antics. And I've
And
been tired of it for a while. And we're
okay,
seeing
you and I
poll
are one thing, but
results.
wait a second. You have conservative friends. I have conservative friends. I have liberal friends. But all of something's wrong here because all of my conservative friends have had it with Donald J. Trump. Something's going on here. They want someone else. They're sick of it.
Well, the polls have already said most Republicans do not want Trump to run. Most Democrats don't want Biden to run. People are tired of this. They want a grown up in the room, and neither Biden nor Trump is capable of being that. And yes, you're seeing, Trump is holding fast to the diehard Trump base. But the fact of the matter is, the diehard Trump base may win a primary, but it's not going to win a general. The general election has to be won with moderate Republicans, moderate Democrats, and independents. And that group cannot stand either Biden or Trump.
I think a missed opportunity here, possibly for America, is RFK Jr. This really kind of pisses me off because you know liberal media stamped him as a vax extremist. Okay, so you automatically, like the Lewinsky playbook, you automatically marginalize, dismiss someone, right? But then when you listen to him in interviews, anytime he's had an opportunity to have an interview, unfortunately, it's been on mostly conservative venues. The guy makes a lot of sense. I think he'd be a healer for America. He's sharp. He's, like you said, somewhere in the middle, and he's not a vax crazy person.
No, he's not. And a recent poll by The Economist and YouGov is actually showing that the mainstream media is out of touch. According to this poll, RFK Jr. was viewed favorably by 49% of respondents and unfavorably by 30% of respondents. Now, in comparison, to put that in some context, Joe Biden was found unfavorable by 52% and favorable by sorry, he was
I
yeah,
think his
he was
favorability
no,
somewhere in
he
the
was
30s. I think.
yeah, he was unfavorable by 52%, and he did have a 45% somewhat favorable impression. Trump had a 53% unfavorable and a 43% favorable. So RFK is doing much better in both favorability and unfavorability. And despite the liberal media trying to portray him as this, outlier,
Nutcase.
as a nutcase, his message is getting through.
Now, let me ask you a question. It's not naivete. Maybe it is. How does it get through? Because there's no oxygen in the room for him. And CNN, MSNBC, they're scared to death of this guy because it makes their man Biden look like the moron he is. So how are people getting this message?
People are
Assuming
getting
they are.
people are getting his message the old-fashioned way, through live events. He has been going on giving speeches, having rallies. People are seeing him in person. Also, Fox has been covering his candidacy. And despite what MSNBC and CNN want you to believe, Fox actually has a larger Democratic viewership than either one of their networks.
Interesting. So why are they so scared? I mean, this is RFK. That's historically part of the the rock bed of democratic ideals and so on and so forth and history. Why are they so? 30 years ago, they would have embraced someone like this. Has
They're af-
the situation changed that much? I think it
they're
has.
they're afraid because an RFK candidacy, if he can win the primary, it shows that the DNC doesn't care about America, doesn't care about what's good for the country, and doesn't care what the Democratic voters want. They're choosing their candidates. So it highlights what the DNC has been doing for, I mean, at least since 2016, possibly longer. We have
Longer.
evidence that they've been rigging their primary since 2016, but it also showcases how in bed with the DNC the media has been. They they have colluded, to use one of their favorite words, to rig the Democratic primaries.
Well, at the expense of the American people. They did that with Biden, allowing him to hide in the basement. And that brings up something maybe a little off center, but still, I mean, I don't think this Biden basement strategy is going to work, especially as things heat up with Hunter and his own investigation, uh, events around the world. I mean, I don't know. You tell me. I don't see how this thing plays out. 2 years of this. There's
No,
no
he
pandemic to hide behind. Is my point.
no, he cannot hide in the basement this time. The House Oversight Committee has already released the bank records that show the payments to the Biden family. So there is no question that Burisma and Chinese companies have been paying off the Biden family. Now, there's nobody in the Biden family that is in business that has provided any service other than access to Joe. So this is going to heat up. Now, if Biden decides he doesn't want to deal with it, like when the Hunter Biden deal was announced, he said, we're very proud of him and we're not going to comment on this. Well, guess what? Even the most democratic liberal media is getting tired of him dodging questions.
Is
To
that really true? I don't mean it as an assertion against you. I'm saying, do you is there things just beyond an emotional look to bellwether, or do you really think that the media is starting to get frustrated with this crap?
oh no,
Because it's
reporters,
continuing.
yeah, it's continuing, but reporters from liberal media, New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC, have come out and stated that they are tired of him dodging questions. So, I mean, it's not a matter of opinion. The reporters are saying this openly. Now,
Well, I don't think
there,
he's capable of answering a question. We both
I
agree with
don't
that.
I don't
I
think
really
he
don't think so. I'm
is.
serious.
No, I think you're right. And that's one of the reasons why I believe it was 70% of Democrats want him to have a primary debate, because they want to know once and for all, is he capable of forming a coherent thought? Because
Okay, let's.
more and more people are of the opinion that he can't.
Okay, let's just play this out. If it'll ever happen, I doubt it. RFK, I've seen him, very smart, articulate. Again, I think it would blow up the whole Biden in one interview, one debate. Check, please. Am I not correct?
Yes,
I don't
and
see how Biden withstands that. There's no way.
I
You don't
think
have the hatred against Trump. You have someone that's a very compelling figure against an actual mental midget that's
yeah,
declining as we speak.
I think the only way this is going to happen is if one of the news organizations, and I'm going to say based on history, it would have to be CNN, and I don't think they'll do it, but CNN or Fox has to come up and say, you know what, we don't care what the DNC is saying. We are going to ask Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. if they want to have a debate, and then we will put it to Biden. And then the Biden administration is going to have to explain why they're hiding from a debate.
Okay, but we talked about CNN. We don't want to have to go down this road very long, but seems like things were had the possibility of changing. You had the Trump town hall. You had some, rearranging of the Titanic's deck, but you had the counter coup attempt. And I think it's even though hell be with you with the ratings, they don't really give a shit. It's now back to the political hack organization it was before the potential for objectivity.
Yeah, unfortunately, the woke agenda at CNN is strong with the staffers, and they rebelled against the leadership, forcing him out. I don't know that they're going to be able to keep doing that, though, because Warner Brothers as a whole, Warner Brothers Discovery as a company, has been having a lot of trouble. And you're seeing this in the media, you're seeing this across not just the media but business as well. We've used the phrase over and over: go woke, go broke. Warner Brothers just had this past weekend a massive flop at the box office that will never make back their money, and the money is going to make the difference as more and more of these woke and unpopular projects come to light and they don't make money, and in this case lose quite a bit of money. They're going to end up firing these woke staffers who
And
are
then that
standing in
happened
their
just
way.
recently at Disney, didn't it?
Yes, Disney had this, actually the same thing happen at the box office this weekend. Their movie Elementals, which was another woke Pixar production, opened to the lowest box office that a Pixar movie has ever had. And last night at 9:30 p.m., they announced that their DEI chief, Latondra Newton, who has been in charge of DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and been the
Should be more
architect.
like DWI. But
Yeah,
anyway, that's not.
and has been the architect of Disney's woke agenda since 2017, left the company. Now, left is their words. The release actually said she is moving on to other opportunities. Okay, when a
I thought that
company,
went out in the 1980s.
yeah,
I love
when
that.
when a company says that someone is
Yeah.
moving on to other opportunities and they make the announcement at 9:30 at night Eastern time, where most of the news has already finished, that means that this person was fired, and they're trying to sweep it under the rug. So
No
yeah,
question about it.
Disney is starting to learn the go woke, go broke mantra, and
Well, that's in process. You never, the way what I've learned doing this podcast, you know, even the obvious sometimes cannot happen with the cloud of wokeness. So we'll see how it goes. But it's not like this is
oh,
the first time they've opened with a bomb. It's not. It's
right.
consistently happening over the last several years. So we'll
Yes,
see. The verdict's still
and
out.
there is the very strong possibility that this entire thing, they will hire another very woke DEI official, continue doing the same things they've been doing, but
Of course they will. They can't help
try
themselves.
to whitewash it. And it's not going to work. The fact of the matter is that America as a whole, once you leave the coasts, they are tired of Hollywood and other businesses trying to push the woke agenda down their throats. We saw it with Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch. We saw it with Target. We saw it with Kohl's.
Oh, we also saw it recently in the sports arena. The LA Dodgers
Yeah.
had, you can't even explain it, some kind of like trans, it was anti Catholic. This is in LA. They were greeted with sound boos and probably 500 people in the stands.
Well,
That's at Los Angeles.
more than sound booze, there was a protest against this group that the Dodgers were honoring that night outside the stadium. The protest had more attendees than the game and honoring ceremony had.
That's
And
no
this,
surprise, is it?
well,
Who's going to bring your kids?
in woke Los Angeles, it is.
Okay, there you go. Sorry about that. Yes, if it was anywhere else, you'd say, how could it ever happen? Very interesting. But, I don't know. It's very interesting that I think it's a lot of elitism. And this is, you don't have to be a genius to figure this one out. They're the same sipping Chardonnay at the vineyard, and they've really abandoned their constituency. Wokeism trumps, no pun intended, profits. And that's exactly the reverse of what needs to be happening. Their responsibility is to maximize shareholder value. That's what it is. Not
That
woke
is
value.
right. That is their job. And I honestly believe that a lot of what's going on with organizations pushing their woke agenda falls into one of two categories. One, these organizations were formed for a very good reason, and they did their jobs. And now, in today's world, they've become irrelevant because the problems that they were formed to fix, and I'm talking about groups like the NAACP, like the Southern Poverty Law Center. These organizations did fantastic work for the civil rights movement. And guess what? We're actually, despite what the woke mob wants you to believe, we're a lot less racist than we were in the 60s, in the 50s,
Not
in
even,
the
not
70s.
even close.
You know,
Even unless
yeah,
you're some kind of a whack job, pretty much no other country has done more. Meaning, have become more racially neutral, racially blind than the United States. These organizations are looking for problems, not vice versa. What they
right.
did in
They
the
are
'60s, completely different. They're looking for shit to keep themselves in business. There you go.
exactly.
Simple as that. Sorry.
They are pushing the woke agenda to try to prove that they are still relevant, rather than adapting to the world as it exists in 2023 and adapting their missions. So that's one group of woke. And the other is sheer ego. And this came out in the Tim Scott interview on The View with Sonny. I can't remember Sonny's last name, but when Sonny was pushing the idea that what Tim Scott and she did was exceptional. This is ego, pure and simple. These are folks that are saying either A, I'm exceptional, you can't do what I did without help, or B, folks that have refused to put the work in, but they don't want to take responsibility for not being successful. So, oh, it's someone else's fault. And those are the two big groups that are pushing this woke agenda. It's the irrelevant and the egotist.
True, and the racist, because if you really look at the facts, many minority groups. I mean, it's more the exception, more the rule than the exception. They're just perpetuating this lie to keep people on the reservation. I think that's the ultimate racism. To tell someone unless Big Daddy government helps you out, you're incapable. That to me is insulting.
Yeah, I actually group that racist group in with the ego group, because what is more egotistical than thinking an entire race of people can't survive without your help?
I love that. I never thought about it that way. You have such a high opinion of yourself that you think your friends and associates cannot
Yeah,
function without you. Wow. Talk about narcissism.
exactly.
Brutal. Also on the entertainment, you look at the entertainment landscape. Sometimes there is a God because he's milking this shit for years. I have no idea how he got paid $5 million a year. But Geraldo's officially out at the five, which was essentially his only gig at Fox. I saw him a couple times on the five. I was surprised he kept his job after that. I don't know what he's smoking. It's not my business. But he basically almost starting a fight with Gutfeld. The guy's 80 years old. Please, who are you going to fight, right?
Yeah,
What, the geriatric
the
center? And he goes, "You punk," and all that. He's like, and not even that, but what did he ever contribute? He's like so 1980s. It's stop it. Go back to the vault.
yeah, the five is actually not his only job on Fox.
So it should be.
He hosts Cops on Fox Nation. For those people who
Mm-hmm.
remember the old Fox network show Cops, it still airs on Fox Nation, hosted by Geraldo Rivera. I have never understood why anybody would take anything Geraldo Rivera says seriously. I have always been a huge fan of Johnny Carson, and I still watch on streaming
So do
episodes
I.
of the Tonight
Can't
Show
be
with
beat.
Johnny Carson. And Johnny Carson constantly made fun of Geraldo because he had that talk show. He did a talk show where he appeared naked with nudists. He did a talk show where he had fat cells from his ass implanted in his forehead for plastic surgery. He had one where the guests actually assaulted him. He was in the vein of Jerry Springer and Morton Downey
Yeah, he was
Jr.
pre Jerry
What?
Springer. He also
Yes,
did a King. What is it? No, Capult. What is it? Who was the guy? The gangsters.
Al Capone's Vault,
Al Capone's
which was
vault.
one of the most hyped programs of the 1980s, only to find out the vault was empty. After that run,
Like his
I do
brain.
not understand why anybody gave him any credibility. And the only thing I'm disappointed about Geraldo Rivera being pushed out of the five is that it's going to give more airtime to Jessica Tarloff,
Oh God, no! No! I
who's
cannot
even
stand her.
stupider than Geraldo Rivera
I
is.
cannot. No, Geraldo's just a useful, like an idiot. He can be someone amusing, whatever. Jessica Tarlo is, again, sometimes in life you can't answer the question. I have no idea how she got there. She's reasonably attractive. I got that. I got a grating voice. She's her opinions. I've never seen her make a coherent point. They're all talking points. That's another one. I have no idea why she's getting a paycheck. There's a lot of attractive, a lot more intelligent liberal Democrats that would fit the bill.
and
Thoughts?
and she doesn't fit into the show. And I use Harold Ford as an example because Harold Ford's the other one that's in that liberal seat. Harold Ford is in on the joke. Greg Gutfeld, who is on the five, is a comedian, and he constantly picks on Harold Ford and Jessica Tarlow. Jessica is not in on the joke. She gets offended. She's upset, obviously upset at being picked on. Where Harold Ford rolls with it, he knows it's a joke. He goes along with it, and Harold Ford is a staunch Democrat. He was a Democratic congressperson, and he
But he
is
makes
an
sense as well.
yes,
I agree with
he is
everything you're saying.
incredibly intelligent.
Yes, and what you've done is nail it, and you just put it in its wraps it up in a bow. Jessica, she has no sense of humor. She's not particularly bright. So those that combination, when put together, equals no sense of humor because you don't have the capability to have one. Harold Ford, diehard liberal. He's smart. He rolls with the punch. He laughs a lot.
He
Jessica has a hissy fit, takes her little ball, and goes leaves the playground.
and
I have no idea where she got to where she is. No
no
idea.
no idea when Harold makes a point that the other panelists disagree with. He can match them point for point using facts and data. When Jessica uses a fact, it's usually misinterpreted. And Geraldo wouldn't know a fact if it bit him in the ass.
No, it's yeah, that train is. But it's really funny that actually that he Gutfeld is crushing. Which okay, sometimes you say he's crushing the late night landscape. Yeah, really. I mean, you talk about Johnny Carson. That train left the station 30 years ago. These guys suck, and I think Gutfeld is exposing them for the charlatans. I'll use the word charlatans because they're not comedians. They're liberal activists, and I think the shtick is getting really old because they're not even funny. If they were liberal and like somewhat funny, okay, whatever, got it, I guess. But they suck.
Yeah, if you watch an episode of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert,
Oh God, please.
one of the things that stands out in the monologue in a lot of the interviews is that when the applause sign goes on, the audience applauds. But there's no laughter coming from the audience. Sometimes there's a nervous giggle. There's a couple of people that might titter. But when now, David Letterman was also very liberal, but he was funny. When he cracked a joke, when he said something, the audience genuinely laughed. When Craig Ferguson, who I don't know what his
He was
politics are,
excellent,
he kept his politics off the show and he was
excellent.
hysterical. Conan O'Brien. Now, of course, none of these folks can really stand a candle to Johnny Carson.
No,
Johnny
definitely.
invented the genre. But these were people that were funny, that knew their job was not to make a political point, but was
I
to make the audience laugh.
I can
And
almost guarantee you that Conan O'Brien is very liberal oriented, but he kept it to himself and he was funny. Late night with Colbert, I would rather that and Anderson Cooper. Like I said before, I'd rather the Yule log on Channel 5 in New York City any day of the week.
yeah, I mean, there was a time where, I mean, Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man is in America at the time, was a very liberal individual. The only time that ever showed up on the CBS Evening News was when he spoke out against the Vietnam War. That was it. You never knew what his politics were. You never knew what Johnny Carson's politics were because they were there to do a job, and that job was not to push a political agenda.
Yeah, and Johnny
That's
Carson was an equal opportunity flamethrower. He dissed
yes,
Reagan. He portrayed him as not being the sharpest tool in the shed. He went after Carter. I mean, it goes all the way back to Gerald Ford falling down the airplanes. I mean, it was funny. I mean,
yes.
Colbert. I didn't. First of all, you said he was going to get fired. I guess before COVID or something, or before
Uh,
Trump. I mean, come
alleged,
on, stop it. How can
alleged,
this?
yeah, allegedly prior to Donald Trump, there was talks that they were going to get rid of Stephen Colbert. Now the whole thing has changed, turned around, and Colbert just extended his contract.
Oh God. Okay. How do you get paid for non-performance? Because that's
I,
what we're talking about. I mean,
I don't know.
it's just pathetic.
I think they're basically using the TV news weatherman model. As long as you show up and say something, it doesn't matter if you're right or not. You get paid.
There you go. Well, one thing we should all be happy about is the prediction of our doom and gloom has not come to fruition, has it?
No, it hasn't. And of course, what you're referring to is as we record this on June 21st, 2023, this was the date that Greta Thunberg stated that if we didn't stop using fossil fuels by now, the planet was doomed. It was over. Well, guess what? Yet another climate extremist proven wrong. Now,
With no
we're not saying
qualifications
right.
whatsoever. You could have an MIT climatologist, okay, stating some facts, okay, and they're not, but someone who has no background in it whatsoever, the world stops at every pronouncement.
Yes, and let's be clear, we're not saying that climate change isn't real. We're not even
We
saying
both agree with that.
right, we're not even saying that climate change is a problem. But we are saying that it's a problem we can solve and the extremists are not putting forward real solutions.
And the reason why they're not doing that is because, once again, when you talk about liberalism, it's an opportunity for a government power grab. And that's the only conflict I have with the whole climate initiative. Not because I don't believe in it, because I do believe in it, but I question the motives of the left.
Absolutely. And we just saw, I mean, we've talked about this repeatedly on this podcast, that there is scientific evidence. Papers have been peer reviewed and published that have said we can solve climate change if we start planting 1 million new plants each year. If all of these extremists went out and planted 10 plants a year, we would have solved the problem already. The other thing is they grab onto anything to try to prove their point, whether or not there's any science behind it. The A large swath of the United States over the last several weeks suffered from horrible air quality because of forest fires and wildfires in Quebec, and the ash just blew down. And AOC and Chuck Schumer jumped on the microphone saying, this is why we need to pass more spending for green initiatives. This is because of climate change. And if you look at the science, not only is this not relevant to climate change, this type of event has happened repeatedly since the 1700s. And over the last 20 to 30 years, the number of these events has decreased, not
Yeah, but this isn't.
increased.
Yeah, shut up, shut up, shut up. That doesn't fit the agenda. Next,
Right.
please. There you go. Um, on something as very tragic. There's unfortunately, as the hours go by, the chances of a successful conclusion are becoming more remote, and that is I guess, the Titanic observational submarine.
Yes, the Titan 4 submarine. Um, we have a number of naval, Coast Guard, and I believe Canadian ships as well are converging on an area that they believe they have detected sound that they think is the submarine, but the submarine is losing air. They're within a day of running out of air, and of course, that's the end of any hope of getting them back. I don't think most people are aware of what this sub was because the coverage it's getting um, is very off. Everybody keeps talking about the fact that this was an observational sub that was going to view the wreckage of the Titanic. This was also an experimental sub. And what this sub was trying to do for deep sea exploration is the same thing that SpaceX was trying to do for space exploration, which was to allow civilians to be part of this. And one of the people who is trapped on that sub is actually the founder of the group that has been working on these experiments. And this was funded by the private sector to try to build deep sea exploration. And it sort of seems unfathomable now, no pun intended. But there's so much about the oceans that we don't know. And that's what this group was trying to do. And unfortunately, they've, again, this was the Titan 4, so they've done this before. There were other subs that have completed this successfully, but this was a very risky and dangerous venture. Everybody who was on the sub was aware it was a risky and dangerous venture, and hopefully they'll be able to be rescued before time runs out.
Let's all keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully next week, when we launch another edition of Carnivore Bites, everything has a happy conclusion, and we can only pray for that. But another great podcast, Dr. Lopkin, and a little more activity maybe on our website of late.
Yeah, of course, if you want to contact us, you can go to xvadio.com/connect. Let us know what you think. You can also contact us on the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. And of course, you can listen to every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lopkin. I'll see you next week.
We'll see you then.